Hello and welcome to the I've Seen Everything Reaction Wrap-Up. My name's Andrew and I'm glad to have you here with me. This is where I share my thoughts, rating, and review following my most recent reaction or watch-along video. To find these reaction and watch-along videos, please visit @SeenEverything over on YouTube. Please be sure to click the follow button here on the podcast, and for those listening on Apple Podcasts, a rating and review would be greatly appreciated. And now, on to this episode's wrap-up for the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Well, there are few cinematic experiences quite like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The musical performances and just the style and tone of the entire production. The story doesn't really make sense. In a thing like this, the story isn't that important. It's not really the point. Which also is kind of on brand, again, knowing with more historical context that this is kind of an homage and a parody of sci-fi and horror B-movies of like the 50s and before and things like that. As far as this movie historically, I can see why through modern eyes there are some people who would say, well, that's not necessarily a great way to represent certain things when it comes to the queer community, when it comes to sexual orientation, gender identity, things like that. There are some outdated ideas, there are some outdated terms in this movie, and ways that representation could be problematic, and I understand that. I honestly kind of see it as a sign of progress, and again, this is just my opinion, so throw it away if it's not worth anything to you. I feel like it's kind of a sign of progress that something like this looks that way to younger people. Because it means that the world that this was created in, the world this was commenting on and responding to, that we at least no longer live in that world, and especially members of the queer community no longer live in that world. Now, that doesn't mean there's not still problems, very real things that need to be improved and more progress to be made, for sure. But it is something that seems kind of strangely hopeful when things that make a particular statement about where the world is on certain issues at a particular point no longer make sense in the future because the world is not necessarily that way anymore. At least not in the same ways. This was obviously at a time, and there's many people who know this far better than I do, where people in the queer community were just demanding to be heard, demanding to be able to exist, let alone being able to exist openly or without harassment or without being put in danger, without unfair consequences if they were to live true to who they were. If you're living in a world that is basically, if you think about Brad and Janet and all that wedding party at the beginning, but Brad and Janet at the beginning, imagine an entire world of Brad and Janet. And you are somebody who doesn't fit into that mold. And you are just desperate to be able to make a statement about this is who I am and I'm proud of it and I'm not going to hide it. What I do know is that I know that it wasn't people making fun of people in the queer community who made this movie. It was people of the queer community who made this movie in 1975. That this movie and the culture around it, the fandom of it, came to be a safe place for people of that community. And some of this I watched recently in a video that I don't normally recommend videos on other channels here, or at least I haven't to this point. But I do feel like this one is particularly relevant, and I'm going to put it in the description if you want to watch it. I'll do it in the Patreon too, especially for younger people who might not understand the context. If you're older, you understand maybe this context, but it is important to understand how the past relates to the future on things like that. And I had it here. Let me bring it up real quick. The Queer History of the Rocky Horror Picture Show on a channel called Polyphonic. I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the description of this video. It does a really good job, certainly not comprehensive, but at least a brief telling, like 15 minutes, of the creation of the Rocky Horror Show and this movie and what it meant to the queer community and the movement and all that kind of stuff, and even commenting on how that translates and connects to those efforts today. I think whenever you look at something like this before you judge what it's trying to say, you need to try to understand the context of where it was coming from, the world it was created in, and what they were trying to say. And Rocky Horror Picture Show, or Rocky Horror Show, certainly wasn't alone in this regard. It was a very unique chapter in it as far as the creative works that came out during that time. But I mean, we're talking about time periods where there were all kinds of performance art and music and other films that were very strange and boundary pushing and making some kind of out there statements, but also some important statements the kind of gender bending of the whole glam rock era and David Bowie and all this kind of stuff. All of this is kind of connected. At least that's how I see it. It's kind of connected to that. So I think it's an important piece in that regard. And I think it's a time capsule for a lot of what people were thinking and feeling during a certain time period within the queer community. But as far as the movie itself, even beyond that, even if you don't pay attention to any of that, it's just a fun movie with a lot of good music. And as long as you're not too uptight about, them pushing kind of things with gender and sexual orientation and stuff, as long as you're a fairly open-minded person, you can have a good time. And I will say that was one of the more problematic parts about Frank-N-Furter. I mean, it was on brand for Frank-N-Furter, but there was consent in those scenes with Brad and Janet, but it did come after a decent amount of coercion. And like this whole kind of situation where they were trapped in this place doesn't speak to a lot of voluntary kind of things happening. But the waters are a bit murky when it comes to that. But beyond that, it's still a movie I enjoy. I've enjoyed it ever since I first watched it. Again, still haven't made it to an actual late night theater showing of this. I might do that at some point. Let me know if you've actually gone and seen this in the theater and seen all the people dressing up, and let me know if you've been a part of it. I'd be interested to hear it. That is all for us today. Thank you for being here with me to watch this. I hope for the YouTube edit it wasn't too bad. Again, before we get out of here, please be sure to go over and check out the Patreon. Again, the full-length reaction to this movie is already up over there. There's all kinds of other full-length movie reactions over there, exclusive full-length television show reactions, all kinds of stuff. I hope you go over and have a look and consider becoming a patron. I'd really appreciate it. If you'd be so kind, please go ahead and rate, comment, and share this episode of the podcast. Really helps me out here. Thank you for being here watching this with me today. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next video. Take care. Thank you for listening to the I've Seen Everything reaction wrap-up. Again, to find these reaction and watch-along videos, please visit @SeenEverything over on YouTube. Please consider following the podcast, and for those on Apple Podcasts, a rating and review are always appreciated. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll meet you here on the next episode.